This authenticity and vulnerability, which are so interlinked, is around allowing the human to be wherever we go, allowing the human part of us to be in who we are, what we do, what we project. It's about letting go of the perfect, you know. That's hard because we do often have this, perfectionist within, but it's hell-bent on trying to get it right all of the time. And yet when we just start to let go of that, we are so much more impactful in our leadership.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kornelia Zegiel. I'm the leader of Global Women Club in Frankfurt. For those who are new here, this channel is mostly about the leadership and personal growth. If you want to reach out to the next level, please stay tuned, because I highly believe those videos and interviews will inspire you to transform and grow. Good morning, everyone. Hello, Sam. Welcome you in my next episode for our podcast. And today we are going to talk about conscious leadership. Sam, I'm very delighted to have you here. And before we start, congratulations for the run which you did yesterday for the foundation, which you mentioned in the social media. So once again, congratulations for that.
Thank you so much. It was a real achievement, actually, Cornelia, because I'd had really bad back pain, in the weeks leading up to it. And the charity that I was running for, Wings for Life, is in aid of spinal cord research. And so it meant a lot for me to be able to recover enough to do the run, and also at the same time to treat my body carefully and to do as much as I could. So my run was slow, and yet I felt so good afterwards because I managed to complete it as best I could. I wasn't comparing myself to other people. And it was really about the kind of humanity of coming together for a common cause and not getting caught up in having to be the best or go the furthest or anything like that. So it was really actually a lovely lesson again in self-leadership, doing the best you can.
I know. I remember when you read your post, this is what you mentioned. It's all about your personal achievements. It's nothing as a competition. And it's driving me basically nicely to our subject, which we are going to talk about conscious leadership. But before I'm going to jump to the first question, let me introduce to our audience Sam Allen. Sam Allen is a British. She's living in Switzerland, beautiful Switzerland. She's certified coach, but it's not about the titles today. It's all about the wisdom and experience. She's very powerful, experienced coach. But you have to also know she's having 20 years experience in the education. And she was working in the corporate, in the finance. And what is very interesting about Sam, she's a poet, she's a blogger, and a podcaster. So I'm very delighted to have that episode recording with you and tap into your wisdom and your lessons, which you can bring out of your trainings with people and women. Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be here, Cornelia. And you forgot the crazy cat lady. That's another one of my titles.
Okay, cat lady. Yeah, I forgot. I know you're wearing a lot of hats, but yeah, so very nice. Okay, Sam, my first question, which I would like to ask you, is something which maybe will be a little bit controversial, which we're going to start. Because leadership, it's not about the position, isn't it? It's not about the position, it's all about the disposition, actually. Let me do a little intro, and then we can start nicely our discussion. This positioning, and basically our attitude, because the way how we think can also influence us and also the people which we are leading. So my question to you, why actually we are talking about the conscious leadership, and why about this attitude? And like you mentioned, even at the beginning, when you start this running for the charity, how to blend that one with all of these aspects,
Yeah, I love that question. And I'm also struck on the poetry in position and disposition. So that really resonated with me. And yeah, the fact is, Cornelia, that as leaders, we are having an impact all of the time. And if we're really going to be agile and engaging as leaders, then definitely our flexibility is required. And we kind of need to have a sense of what to be when. So it's really about kind of being able to see what's in front of us and adapt according to what the need is. And so Daniel Goleman, you know, the famous psychologist, he speaks of 6 styles of leadership, ranging from coaching to democratic to commanding. And yeah, I won't go into all of them. But the thing is here is actually to see which one is needed in a given situation. So, for example, when change is required in an organization and perhaps more direction is needed, then that's when the visionary leadership is going to serve best, as that style is more kind of like, come with me. I have a vision. I have, you know, an image of where we're going, and I'd love you to come along with me. Whereas when there is perhaps conflict or stress within a team, and maybe there's more, you know, a feeling of motivation that is needed, then the affiliative style might be more useful, which is a bit more about empathy, building relationships and communication. And where we can get stuck as leaders is by over-defining ourselves in one style of leadership and then not leaning into the other 5 types or more, you know, that are available to us. So it's super important that we remain flexible and able to be in contact with the different styles and shift our focus according to, you know, what response is needed.
Yeah, very nicely you demonstrated all this time, but you know, reality might be slightly different. We know something from the concept perspective, which is great.
Yeah.
But Sam, how you can give this kind of tools maybe or ideas how to put ourselves in this consciousness mode, you know, okay, because sometimes it's very difficult to judge it from our perspective. We need someone outside, you know. How do you advise that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, one of the best things we can actually do is to get feedback. And sometimes that is really difficult because when we get feedback, we put ourselves in quite a vulnerable place where sometimes what we hear, you know, we're not going to like. And yet the more we know, the more we can grow. And so it's really important to know what impact we're having. Because sometimes with all the best will in the world, we could have a really positive intention, but actually the impact we're having is not quite that, you know, for example, you know, you could go into a meeting and think, right, I want to be super positive today. My team needs this, you know, and you could be gung-ho going in that attitude. And perhaps one of your team members is having a really bad time, you know, perhaps they are really not in the place that you're in. And so they feel kind of like, you know, cajoled into false positivity. So you're not meeting them where they're at. And so it's really important to be very conscious about the impact that you're having, and getting that feedback is one really great way of becoming more conscious.
Okay.
Yeah. And also the power of intention is what really comes very much to my mind, both in our personal and professional lives, actually, because we can create atmospheres, energies intentionally. And we can do that by actually having a practice where we begin a meeting or the start of our day or a really important time in our life by actually coming into contact with ourselves and asking ourselves, actually, what's really important here? What do I want to evoke today that's going to really serve? And then choosing a word, you know, maybe it's calm or focus, or who knows what the word would be. And actually taking a moment to stop and even breathe into that word. And actually, just in breathing into the intention, we begin setting the tone for what's happening around us. And we let go of it then, and we, you know, the rest happens as it's meant to. But it's not to be underestimated. And I personally, something that I find very powerful as a practice with intention is at home on my bathroom mirror, when I start the day, I have a selection of chalk markers. And so I kind of tune into what's needed. with my clients, in a workshop, with whatever I'm doing. And I breathe into that intention. And then I go one step further and I actually write it on my mirror, you know? And so every time I go back into the bathroom, I can see that word, that atmosphere. And I'm consciously going back to what tone I want to set in my world for that day ahead. And so it's something we do have to revisit, and it's exceptionally powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'm hearing you, and whenever we are hearing from the successful people, you know, across the world, this is something which is driven by them as well, this intention which you mentioned. And I think everybody might have a slightly different way of leaning into it. You know, you are like a very inspirational and very poetry driven person, you know, very sensitive, might write it on the mirror, but others might also do it in a different way, you know, I don't know, laptop, wherever, smartphone, wherever it's needed. But I really love your concept and idea, like set the intention for the day. But is it time consuming or is it pretty easy? You know, how did you, because honestly, this is something which is new, you know, when I was starting my education, no one really talked about mindfulness, you know, setting your day, honestly. This is something which is evolving since decades, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to want to, let's face it. Mm-hmm. But when you want to and you honor that need in you, then it's incredible what can come from it. But I do have to say, I mean, I personally start my day exceptionally early. So I'm up, you know, 6 o'clock. And for me, it's really super important to have an hour or even an hour and a half before I start my working day to have a ritual which sets me up for the rest of the day. And so actually over the years, this intention setting has become an integral part of my morning ritual. And it definitely takes time and practice to bring that into the day-to-day. But right now in my life, it's just something that is part of who I am and what I do. You know, I get up, I do a little bit of meditation, nothing too serious, but, you know, maybe 5-10 minutes. And then I'll set my intention for the day. And then I go out for a walk or a jog and I write my poem, because for me, the gift of the creative expression is huge when it comes to personal fulfillment. And then after all that, I feel in this place where I have honored my personal needs to the extent that I can then come forward in my professional life with my clients in a way that I really want to be, you know, rather than, oh gosh, I'm rushing from one thing to another. And you know, I've made no time for my own process. So I think it's finding ways in which we make time for our own process, because we do as human beings need time to be in our thoughts, to be in our reflection, to be in our hearts, and especially to be in our bodies. So the more we can do to connect heart, soul, mind, body, and to bring that into a ritual that serves us in the day, the more fulfillment there is, Kornelia, you know? Mm-hmm. And you're right, you know, what you said at the beginning, everybody has their own way. You know, some people like to use their phones and have even just an image on the phone that reminds them of what's important right now. You know, sometimes that's working with clients too. So you definitely have to find your thing. Even some space for journaling is really, really helpful. At some point in your day, morning or evening, just having 10-15 minutes to free write stuff that's coming up for you. So again, you can actually invite in that processing that really needs to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Sam, for sharing some tips, because like the spectrum is very bright and everybody could choose it wherever they want. Sam, my next question would be this authenticity concept, you know, because like you mentioned, you need to find your way and be yourself. But then what about this authenticity, you know, because if I'm thinking about, you know, corporate leaders and business leaders, of course, there's certain rules, you know, but then everybody's saying like, okay, authenticity, how to resonate with that part, you know, in our leadership role, you know?
Yeah.
How to tackle that?
Yeah, it's a big word, right? And it's actually one of my core values. So I absolutely love this question. And of course, nobody can tell you how to be authentic because you can't do that. You just are. So in a way, when you ask me that question, what it takes me to is permission. You know, authenticity comes when we give ourselves the permission to radiate who we are, again, in our work and in our personal lives. And that can seem quite scary, actually, because sometimes in our organizations, we are given the sense, or we pick up on the sense, that if we behave in this way, if we say this, if we do this right, then we're going to be accepted. So there is a certain risk, in a way, of actually bringing forth our most authentic selves. And yet it is really only from that place that we can truly serve. So I guess what I want to do here is to highlight the fact that it's kind of vulnerable to be authentic. Mm-hmm. And yet, you know, the wonderful Brené Brown in her Dare to Lead book is all about vulnerability, and really speaks to the importance of that in leadership. And in fact, she identifies in her book, Dare to Lead, the 6 myths about vulnerability, which are, number 1, it's a weakness. I don't do vulnerability. I can't go it alone. You can engineer the uncertainty and discomfort out of vulnerability. Trust comes before vulnerability, and vulnerability is disclosure. So yeah, I love the way, I mean, I won't go into more of that now. Do read the book if you're listening and you haven't, because it's really great. But, you know, we can see that it can be really, you know, there's so many things surrounding it. There's so many myths that sometimes it feels kind of easier to be what's expected and to not show up as our full selves. But actually, when we do, people start to know who we truly are. We begin to identify boundaries, so people know what's okay with us, what's not okay with us. And in that clarity, there is kindness, because people know what they're getting. We start to show feelings more. People can relate to us because, in fact, we connect through the sharing of our feelings. And I love in her book, she talks about in meetings that she has with her team, the team has permission slips. And on these permission slips, they have 1 per meeting, and they can actually just touch base with themselves and give themselves permission for 1 thing during that meeting. They don't have to share it with the team or anything like that, but it's a bit about, oh yeah, that's going to allow me to actually relax and be me today, because right now, maybe the permission slip is, I need permission to actually listen rather than talk too much because I've got a sore throat, or, you know, whatever the thing is. So yeah, it's, for me, this authenticity and vulnerability, which are so interlinked, is around allowing the human to be wherever we go, allowing the human part of us to be in who we are, what we do, what we project. It's about letting go of the perfect, you know. Mm-hmm. That's hard, because we do often have this, you know, perfectionist within, but is hell-bent on trying to get it right all of the time. And yet when we just start to let go of that, we are so much more impactful in our leadership. And yeah, we start to have way more influence, actually, in a positive way on those surrounding us. So yeah, it's about letting your color show. It's about letting your human show. It's about rolling up your sleeves, getting it wrong sometimes, taking responsibility for our unintended impact or when things go wrong, and moving forward with grace, with playfulness, and with heart. Yeah, I could speak on that question for ages.
I know that book, and I know you, Sam, because yeah, you were also in our meetings as well, in the club, and also privately.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. And you know what is coming to mind? I mean, what was coming to my mind at the beginning when I was starting that kind of debate and discussion, how should I go on my way in terms of authenticity? The first thing is, okay, if I give so much space, maybe I can lose control. But then, like you mentioned, it's all about the fear. And then it's absolutely completely opposite. There is much more freedom in terms of flying, instead of holding, I don't know, ourselves tightly, team tightly, everybody tightly, everything is super stretched. And then I understand fully. That's why I would like you to talk about it from your experience as well.
Yeah.
Also doing in your workshop, because I remember when we once attended the meeting, when I talked to you, you mentioned can you bring that story about your authenticity? For instance, when you're talking about this social media stuff, and you say, well, if they are not going to accept me, well, I'm not going to attract those people. I love that story, which is showing vulnerability and the authenticity in us as a leader.
Yeah, of course. I'm quite happy to share that personal story. Really, it's just with, there was a period in my own life where I wasn't in full contact with my authenticity. And so I was in that place. It's why I know it, of going through the motions, kind of hiding, keeping under the radar and doing what I thought I should do and being a good girl, And actually I'm laughing, but it was a really painful time in my life because I felt so unexpressed. I felt so unseen. And it felt to me like some of the days were ticking past, and actually this vitality in me and my energy was being squashed right down, And then I had a kind of life-changing event. And after that event, I just realized in the biggest way that I would never do that again. And that, it was my mission to actually come forth as my fully authentic self. And so, yes, for me, I'm an eccentric. So that involves crazy earrings, colors, I'm a poet, as you know, so I'm a super creative person. I'm playful, and, it doesn't necessarily look glossy or how an image of perfect would look. And I'm aware that, for some people, they might think, oh gosh, that's not quite for me, and that's not how you should be, or something. But yeah, now I'm noticing I want to put my hand on my heart and my hand on my belly, because for me, this is a place in my body of self-acceptance. And what I accept to be true is that those that love seeing my humanity, my colors, my eccentric expression will come towards me and will work with me, they will reach out. And those that don't, they're not my people. And actually, since I have got to a greater level of self-acceptance with my eccentricity and authenticity, everything has just felt way more natural for me. It's like I know who my people are. And funnily enough, also, I have this sense of much greater belonging. Oh, yeah. Because people, like I was a bit speaking to before, people know what they're getting, so they can either choose it or not. And, I have more of an attitude now, take me or leave me, rather than I need to be something in order to get taken, or, something like that. So, yeah, it's, the word I would use, Kornelia, is liberating. I feel liberated by the choice to be my authentic self and to accept myself as I am, and to not even just to accept myself as I am, actually, but to project myself outwardly as I am. And knowing that, what, from one day to the next, that can change, Some days I'm feeling, loud or bright and sparkly. Some days I'm feeling shy and sensitive. Some days there's so many things that can come in. And it's about welcoming what's there and allowing that to come through in my energy in a pure way. Yeah.
Beautiful. Awesome. I love that. And that's why I want to have that episode with you, because you're a truly authentic person. And like you said, it's not about this moods and swings. It's like giving ourselves the liberty, permission. Yeah. And it's so rewarding. I know what you are talking about. It's awesome.
Thank you.
My next question actually would be how to go to that process, because like you mentioned, it's a majority of successful people, they might have such a process, changing one, because if you do the things the same way, you cannot expect different results. So you need to change something, the mindset, the perspective, how to start it. Because I know in your teaching, which you do with the clients and people as a coach, you're talking about the unlearning part. How that one, how would you like to explain that from your angle, for both angle, you as a coach and you as an individual, being on a changing process as well,
Yes. Well, yeah, that's a big question. And unlearning is a process that I think we're all constantly in. And let's face it, we are carrying around limiting beliefs, old stories, and these can really impact our presence and our performance. And they can often come through in a voice which we call in coaching the inner critic, you know. And we all have it, and it's a voice that says things like, oh, you won't be able to do that, or, you know, you really think you should be doing that, you might mess it up, or how are you ever going to get there, you didn't the last time, or you know, it's just this very self-limiting voice in us, and it can really, really hold us back. And so in our program, the module on unlearning, we teach participants basically how to first and foremost hear that voice, identify it as an inner critic, not as who they are. And then we take them through a process in which they begin to get clear on what that voice is saying, and then start to let go of it. And then once we've started to let go of that voice, by having identified it, we find antidotes to that voice. So for example, you know, if you're having a thought like, oh, I'm never going to make it, you know, in this meeting, I really don't know how to show up. It could be, I really want to have a positive impact on this meeting, in this meeting on Wednesday. And so learning to turn around the thought, because often we get over focused on what we don't want. And actually the trick is to think about, well, focusing on what we want to create. And that's not to say that what we want to create, we're going to create, you know, perfectly or something like that. But it's about shifting the focus away from the limiting belief and the inner critic towards a more empowering thought process and intention. And another way we also do this is by sometimes personifying the inner critic, because, you know, this voice, you know, it can sound a little bit idealistic because we often carry around this voice our whole lives. And then, like, you know, how do we just overnight suddenly find an antidote and change it? So sometimes it can be fun and also really powerful to draw the inner critic, or to write down its thoughts beside it, to give it a character, to give it a sound of a voice or something like that, and even to become it momentarily. And then having done that, to then find what's the other side of it, you know. So it can be a creative process. You know, whilst the unlearning, it's the sticky bit, it's the bits that we're still kind of getting stuck with, and beginning to identify them and letting them go with grace, and knowing that we can always begin again. So, you know, if one day we don't get there, we always have a choice as leaders to, you know, start again, and take life from that point onwards. So I love the phrase "up until now," because that's really helpful. You know, it's like, up until now, I haven't been able to blah, 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 because there's always in that phrase, and from today, you know, we can always do that. It's so simple, and yet it's so important when it comes to, you know, really being intentional and conscious in our leadership. Yeah, and you were asking me about myself and my process with unlearning. Yeah, I guess as an empath and a highly sensitive being, I'm often hugely impacted, particularly when I'm in person with people, with their energy, with their needs of me, with what's happening for them. And so some of my unlearning process is about learning to stay first and foremost with me, and then to respond to others once I'm in alignment with myself. So I've had to, and I'm still letting go of some beliefs around, I have to just be in service of the other person. I have to meet their needs. You know, some of that is kind of limiting and not serving me. So yeah, there's definite unlearning there for me. And I really believe that we're never the finished product. And I mean, I've had a lot of personal growth in my life since I was 18, basically. And yet still every single day, there's stuff that I'm being with, and, you know, things that I'm having to unlearn. And there's, again, the begin again thing. And I really see this as a continuous process. It's not something that has a start and end point. And yet when we open to it and when we're curious about it, then we start to see real positive spin-offs in our lives, and we feel happier.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because what we did actually, we also tap into the mindset thing, which you started at the beginning, setting the day. It's also the mindfulness there, because I want to set my day, what I'm going to, let's say, go for it. And the same thing about the process. It's also mindset thing. And I love that concept because it gives also the hope.
Yeah.
And to end process. I love that.
Thank you.
I know you're working quite a lot with women, and I would like to dedicate actually one of my last question, tapping into your experience working with the women, especially for the leadership position.
Yeah.
So what would you like to highlight and kind of message up, send a message to our women audience who are going to listen to us, from the leadership perspective? What is holding beliefs or anything which you want to really see as a key from your experience,
Yeah, love that question. And it firstly takes me to the language that we use, in fact, because sometimes we're using as women these kind of shrinkers. And I'm sure I maybe have even used some here today with you because, it's what we do. Things like, I just want to say, or almost, or actually. And it's like things that are like almost semi-apologetic before we deliver them. So I think it's super important that we get conscious around the language that we use, and that we don't make kind of disclaimers before we speak. An example being something like, I'm not an expert in this, but what I think is, and actually dare to know, dare to speak what you think and feel without qualifying it, without shrinking it, without making a little prelude to explain it. Then as women, we become exceptionally engaging and powerful. And even as I speak to that, I feel it in my energy, we have the ability as women to be very persuasive, actually. And we diminish that possibility in ourselves when we over-explain, when we make the disclaimers, when we use the just. And you can see my body, like we're shrinking physically and linguistically there, So just staying conscious of how we're owning who we are and actually daring to express. And as I was saying in my own personal example, yes, not everybody's going to like that. Yes, not everybody is going to get the impact that you perhaps want from that, but most will when you dare to express yourself.
Yeah.
So there is a daring element in it. Daring to tap into your passion, your purpose, the things that excite you, There is nothing more attractive than communicated excitement. And we can bring that into our leadership. We can bring that into our personal lives. And it is, supercharging when it comes to our interactions. So I would really just invite women towards the wholehearted communication of what actually really lights them up, because that's when we truly shine, And you can't fake that. When you're shining, people, you can like touch it and feel it. It's just happening, You can't talk over it. You can't pretend to be it. It's just something that is innate, and it's an enabling and an allowing process. And actually at the end of our program, we have a module called Flourishing. And it's very dear to me and to my co-leader, the lovely Magena, because we have a kind of ceremony. It's an owning ceremony where the participants actually truly claim who they are using I am statements. And they've been so seen on this journey by the cohort of women. There's so much solidarity and love there. And then when they actually get up and own this, they really are flourishing. And you can just see it. I'm just like smiling all over my face to think of it, because there is nothing more beautiful than seeing a woman really own who she is.
Yeah, awesome. I love what you just mentioned. And I think those are the fundamental things which you talk about, this language and passion. Because if I'm just quickly doing the round, it's very never ever, if you talk about the passion, there is no words, I just have that one, this the diminishing piece in us. So you are I didn't pay attention, but you're absolutely right. Whenever there is a passion, when we talk about it, I don't know, movie, what we do, project, there is never the word like, I just a little apologizing thing. Not at all. It's like a bold, you are there, everything. The body language is slightly different. And you know what? I would like to bring you one example because it's just pop up when you just was mentioning about this excusing mode, kind of. I had a meeting last week and I was coming late, which is normal, and I was saying, hey, apologize, guys, thank you for coming late. And the guy who was there, he was saying to me, Kornelia, there is no reason to apologize. You are late, just late, own it, And I said, this is absolutely right. It's better to say, thank you for waiting.
Yes.
Instead of apologizing, but because, I don't want to compare it. But if we observe some leaders, especially men leaders, very rarely they are saying apologizing, even if they are late. Of course, there needs to be a room, for the day. But still, from that concept which you just mentioned about the language which we use, it's really awesome. It's really awesome.
Yeah, I love what you're saying and highlighting there. And we should apologize when we need to.
Oh yeah.
And it's really like when we really know we've done something wrong.
Yes.
Only then. And yeah, I'm also smiling because in my culture as a Brit, as a British woman, it feels like that gets so ingrained. You grow up with having to be ultra polite and apologizing for everything. So going back to the unlearning, it feels like I have a lifetime of unlearning with that. And yeah, it's definitely something that we women need to watch out for. Yeah.
Okay, it was lovely, Sam, to talk to you and get to your wisdom and your nice tips around leadership, how to tap into the authenticity and and be authentic and driving with the passion, because this is what we also discussed. That's why we want to have that podcast together, because it's not if we're equipped in the hard skills, wherever it's needed for the leadership role, this is one element, but the very important pillar is the human aspect, which well, we resonate. I love how you teach, how you empowering people and equipping them in terms of tools. That's why I would like to have that episode with you. So I'm very thrilled and delighted to have you here.
So lovely to be here with you. I just love the way that you lift women up with everything you're doing in such a natural way. You're so inclusive, you're so supportive and warm. And I am truly, truly grateful that we're connected, Kornelia.
Thank you. Okay, if you like that episode, please subscribe, put the likes, and stay tuned for more. Thank you. If you enjoyed the contents of this video, click the subscribe button so you can receive more content like this every week. If you want to keep developing yourself, check my recommended videos